Welcome to this revision blast for AQA GCSE Geography. Today we are focusing on hot deserts, which is part of the living world on paper 1. Remember, you have the choice of either hot deserts or cold environments. So if you haven't studied hot deserts, then don't panic. Just don't watch this revision blast and look at the cold environments one instead. We're going to kick off this revision blast with a bubble quiz. You're going to see a number of questions, and the number of answers that are correct can range from 0 to all 4. So you just need to identify the number that are correct. Here's our first one. So hot deserts are mainly found A, outside the tropics, B, along the tropics, C, south of the equator, D, along the equator. So remember, the number of answers that are correct can range from 0 to all 4. So you might want a pen and paper at the ready just to note down what you think are the correct answers. I'll give you just a moment before we reveal. Let's have a look. It is along the tropics. Well done. Which of these are hot deserts? The Sahel, Atacama, the Gobi, or the Great Western? So again, either 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 are correct. Let's have a look. So the Sahel is not a hot desert, it is a semi-arid area. It is at danger of desertification, which we will have a look at a bit later in this revision blast. But you've got the Atacama, the Gobi, and the Great Western Desert, which is in Australia. Number 3, which of these annual rainfall totals are typical of a hot desert? 400, 200, 300, or 100? Let's reveal the answer. It is 100 and 200. So generally hot deserts will receive less than 250 millimetres of rainfall per year. Which of these are challenges in the hot desert? Inaccessibility, overpopulation, extreme temperatures, and water supply. So we'll just leave those on the screen for a moment. You can jot down which ones you think are relevant to this question. So which are challenges in hot deserts? Let's have a look at the answer. It is inaccessibility, extreme temperatures, and water supply. So that leads to a sparse population because obviously life is very challenging. And finally, which of these are adaptations of hot desert plants? So we've got large flat leaves, very long taproots, water storage in the stem, and rapid life cycles. Let's reveal the answer. It is B, C, and D. So very long taproots to tap right down into the deep groundwater, storing water in the stem, and rapid life cycles. Large flat leaves tends to be more of a rainforest adaptation. Okay, let's move on to our next activity. So we're going to have a look at this categorised activity this time. So we have got 8 phrases, sentences, statements, whatever you like, and they are going to be categorised into arid or semi-arid. Okay, I'm going to set you off with 1 minute to try and pop these into the right column. Again, you might want a pen and paper at the ready. Let's have a look at the correct categories. So arid, we may have no rain for decades. The Sahara in northern Africa is an example of an arid environment, and they have very little vegetation. In semi-arid areas, they have a short, reliable rainy season, seasonal grassland vegetation, seasonal crops that can be grown, but desertification is a risk, and the Sahel in Africa is a good example of a semi-arid environment. Okay, we're going to move on to our next activity, which is some multiple choice questions, those MCQs that we know feature on all of our exam papers. So number one, what is the highest average temperature in degrees Celsius of any month? So A, 68, B, 33, C, 8, D, 17. Let's reveal the answer. It is B, 33. So hopefully none of you put 68 down, because that would be horrifyingly hot. The reason we popped it on there is just to make sure that you are aware of which of the lines that you need to be looking at. So on a climate graph, the rainfall is shown by the bars, the temperature is shown by the red line there. So you just need to make sure that you're looking at the correct legend when you're doing that. Right. Number two, what is the highest total precipitation in millimetres in any month? Is it A, 16, B, 68, C, 33, D, 8? So I'm going to give you a moment and then we will reveal the answer. Okay, we are looking for 16. You can see that is in December. What is the temperature range in degrees Celsius shown on the climate graph? So hopefully we know that the range is the gap between the highest and the lowest. So we've got A, 10, B, 7, C, 36, D, 17. Let's reveal the answer. It is D, 17. Okay. Number four, select the correct adjective for this temperature range shown on the climate graph. So is it A, diurnal, B, vernal, C, annual, D, autumnal? Just give you a minute to have a think about that one. Let's reveal the answer. It is annual because it's showing the change over the course of a year. 5. Which of these is a reason that hot deserts can have very cold nights? So is it A, cloudy skies, B, a lack of clouds, C, thunder clouds, or D, rain clouds? Just give you a moment to think about that one. Okay, let's reveal the answer. It is lack of clouds. So it gets really, really hot during the day because of that lack of clouds. So you get intense sunlight. But then as soon as the sun goes down, the fact there are no clouds there means that that heat immediately escapes. So you get a huge range during one day of temperature. Right, we're going to move on to altered vowels. So each of the key terms that you will see have had the vowels changed to an alternative. So they look a bit like an anagram, but they're not. Can you work out the key phrase for each one? So our first one is up on the screen now. What do we think this one might be? I'll give you a hint here. They are all economic activities. Have you worked it out? Let's reveal the answer. It is mineral extraction. So we're going to talk about these in the next activity. Number 2. So remember, it's not an anagram, just the vowels have been changed. This one is fairly easy. What do we think it is? Hopefully you've worked out that it is energy. So lots and lots of energy development takes place in deserts. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, another fairly easy one. Hopefully you have recognised that it is farming. And then our last one is this one. So let's reveal the answer. It is tourism. And like I said, we will have a look at all of these in a bit more detail in our next activity. Okay, so we have our case study alert here. So for hot deserts, you need to have studied one named example, which you'll be asked about in 6 or 9 markers on your paper 1 exam. So a really popular hot desert case study is the Thar Desert, which is located along the border between India and Pakistan in South Asia, and it covers an area of around 200,000 square kilometres. It features sandy hills, mobile sand dunes, and it has sparse, low-growing vegetation. And it's quite interesting because in comparison with other deserts, it's quite densely populated, including some cities such as Desalma. And with your desert case study, you need to know about the economic opportunities that take place there, such as mineral extraction, tourism, agriculture and energy production, and that includes both non-renewables such as coal and oil and renewables such as wind and solar panels. But there are also lots of challenges here. The most significant challenge is the climate, and it's closely linked to the fact that there are water shortages which have been managed in big ways, such as the Indira Gandhi Canal, but also there's huge problems with accessibility. And that means that transportation is obviously very difficult because of the climate. So we're going to have a think about this one with a connection one. And don't worry if you haven't actually studied this particular case study, because the things that come up in this are going to be very similar to the one that you have studied. So we're going to move on to a connection wall activity. So this connection wall contains 16 phrases. They've been grouped into 4 groups of 4. You've got to try and find the connection. So we're going to help you out a little bit. We're going to talk you through the connection each time, and you need to note down which of the phrases you think is linked to that. Let's take a look at our 16 phrases. So the first thing I would like you to look for are the phrases that are linked to mineral extraction. So you can either note down the words, or you could always note down the letters and letters across the top and numbers down the side, so you can work out the coordinates. Just going to give you a few moments. If you need to pause the video, that will be a good opportunity to do so. Okay, so pause the video for a few moments to try and spot those first 4. So we're looking for mineral extraction. We're just about to reveal. Okay, so this is about the Thar Desert, but remember these are relevant for all your other case studies for deserts as well. So it has valuable reserves of minerals. It has marble that's used in construction, minerals such as gypsum, feldspar and kaolin, and also it's a main source of limestone in India. Well done if you spotted those. The next ones that we would like you to look for are things that are linked to energy development. So again, pause the video if you need a little bit more time. Have you spotted the next 4? So let's have a look. You've got the fact there is a large oil field, so deserts tend to have quite a lot of oil underneath. There are cloudless sunny skies, which makes it really good for solar power. You've got the Jaisalmer Wind Park, which is a really, really large wind park. But again, across deserts, you've got those vast expanses. So there's huge potential for wind there. And extensive lignite coal deposits. That's really important for India. India is a country that still gets a lot of its energy. Its electricity is sourced from fossil fuels, particularly coal. Right, the next one that you are going to be looking for is agriculture farming. So which ones there are relevant to agriculture? Again, pause the video if you need a little bit more time. So let's reveal our next 4. Hopefully you have spotted them. It does get a little bit easier as you go on. So in this region, they grow lots of wheat, cotton, pulses, sesame, maize. So lots of grains there. It is mainly subsistence and small-scale farming. So it's not viable enough, and there's not huge amounts of investment in this region for growing crops on a large scale. There are some commercial crops there, but like we said, it is mainly subsistence. But you do have the Indira Gandhi Canal that was built in the 1950s to provide irrigation, and that has made it possible to farm in what was a really barren area. So we have got 4 left on the screen. This time we want you to have a think about what links these 4. So we've got the Desert Festival held every winter, we've got amazing scenery, we've got camel safaris, and we've got local people providing food and accommodation. So what's our link between these 4 remaining boxes? So hopefully you have recognised that it is tourism. So because it is it's very close to the Pakistan border, there are lots of tourists that come across from Pakistan, lots of tourists from India, but you do get international tourists as well. They come particularly for the Desert Festival, which is very popular, and those camel safaris as well. And as a result, tourism provides lots of jobs through providing people with food and accommodation. That's done by locals, so it's small scale tourism, and it does generate a multiplier effect as well, which is obviously a good thing. So this time we have another case study alert, and we are looking at the USA's Western Desert region, which is another popular case study at GCSE. Let's have a think about this one. It is located along the border between the US and Mexico, and again, it is similar in size to the Thar Desert of around about 200,000 square kilometres, but it's made up of 3 deserts. So it's the Sonoran Desert, the Mojave Desert, and the Chihuahuan Desert, and they together make up the Western Desert. The landscape is sandy hills, mobile sand dunes, and sparse low-growing vegetation, just like the Thar Desert. In comparison with other hot deserts, by the standards of the eastern USA, it is quite sparsely populated because there are other deserts where more people live. However, there are some large population centres in this desert. So, for example, Las Vegas, you've got which is in Nevada, and you've got Phoenix in Arizona. In this desert, you need to know about the economic opportunities. There's mineral extraction, so we've got coal and rare elements that are using computerized devices here. We've got copper and uranium. There's also tourism and recreation. You've got agriculture taking place, energy production, again, the idea of non-renewables such as oil, but there's also solar power and hydroelectric projects in this area. But there are huge challenges as well. So the most significant one, again, is the climate, and that's followed by the water shortages. But these have been managed with some massive projects such as the Hoover Dam, which harnesses the power of the Colorado River. But you've also got here growth of urban areas, which together with demand for agriculture and tourism means that water stress is a big concern in this area. Unlike the Thar Desert, transportation is quite well developed with major road and rail routes going through, and there's airports in the region as well, so it is much more accessible. We're going to do some true or false questions based on this case study. So perhaps if it's one that you don't know, it might be that you want to skip through this activity. If not, you can have a go. So firstly, the USA's Western Desert region is in fact 3 deserts, the Saharan, Mojave, and the Chihuahuan. Is that true or false? Let's have a look. Well, it's partly false. So it is 3 deserts. However, if you were reading carefully, it's not the Saharan Desert, it is the Sonoran Desert. Obviously, we hopefully know the Saharan Desert is that enormous one in northern Africa. Climate conditions in the USA's Western Desert are so challenging that hardly anyone can live there. Is this true or false? Let's reveal the answer. It is false. We've already said it is an area that is quite highly populated. One of the world's largest rivers runs through the desert, providing water for irrigation and hydroelectric power. Is this true or false? Let's reveal. It is true, it's the Colorado River. Number 4. Transportation in the USA's Western Desert is extremely limited. Most people travel around on horseback. There are a few dirt roads. Is this true or false? It is false. Lastly, the USA's Western Desert is an increasingly popular retirement, tourism and recreation destination. Is this true or false? Okay, it is true. We are going to do another categorised activity now. So this time you've got 60 seconds to separate these desert plant adaptations into two categories. So because of the harsh environmental conditions, there's not many plants that can survive the climate. So those that do have to make various adaptations. They can either be xerophytic adaptations, which means that they adapt their characteristics, or they can be ephemeral, where they adapt their behaviour. So let's have a look. You've got 1 minute to pop these into the right category. So let's reveal the answers and see whether you have got these correct or not. So the xerophytic adaptations are the following: spikes rather than leaves, large fleshy stems, thick waxy skin, an extensive root system, and a white upper surface. And if we're thinking about the ways that plants adapt their behaviour, the seeds may lie dormant in the ground for years. The plants grow quickly after rain and they flower within a few days. So all of those things there point to a really short growing season. So as soon as it rains, they can get their they can flower. Their flowers can then drop in. They can turn to seeds, which means their life cycles are really, really short to make up for the fact that through much of the year there is very little rainfall at all. Okay, let's move on to our next activity. So we're going to look at an on-balance activity. So we want to think about the advantages and disadvantages of developing tourism in hot deserts. Let's have a look at the advantages first. So 2 advantages. You might want to pause the video to give yourselves a little bit more time. Think about maybe the economic benefit of having tourism taking place in these hot desert regions. So we're about to pause. So we are about to reveal the answer. If you need a bit more time, then just pause. Let's have a look at what you could have. So we've got providing jobs or extra income for local people, and obviously that leads to the multiplier effect that we mentioned a moment ago. And if it's ecotourism, which does often take place in these sort of more remote regions, it can increase visitors' awareness of the value and threats to biodiversity, and that often means that visitors are quite happy to spend a little bit more money locally. They'll spend more money on conservation projects and what have you. Right, let's have a think about the disadvantages of the development of tourism in hot deserts. So again, we'll give you a few moments, and if you need to pause the video, please do. So think about some of the problems that are caused if we develop tourism in these hot desert regions. If you haven't paused already, you need a bit more time, then please do that now, because we are about to reveal. Right, let's see what you could have said for your disadvantages. So firstly, we have large numbers of tourists can lead to environmental impacts, but it can also lead to water stress. So water stress was already mentioned, and it was a big part of the Western Desert case study. So the fact that you've got things like those great big huge hotels in Las Vegas that have a really high demand for water in an area where there really isn't enough. And it was also quite unreliable in terms of income. So not just for the hot deserts, but really any low-income country where you are relying on tourism as a main way of earning money. So we think about how it's unreliable. You can have parts of the year where people don't come. It might just be too hot, that will put people off, but also global events can reduce the demand. So a really good example of that is obviously the COVID pandemic. Let's move on to our next activity. This time we're going to do missing vowels. So we're going a bit like an anagram, but this time rather than having the words jumbled up or the letters jumbled up, we've just removed the vowels. We are looking at something that is a real problem in semi-arid regions. And we have mentioned it a couple of times in the last 10-15 minutes or so. So what keyword is a risk in semi-arid regions? Have you spotted it yet? Well, let's have a look. It is desertification. So it's a process of semi-arid grasslands becoming degraded and drier and turning into desert. And most of the areas at risk from desertification are on the borders of existing deserts. So, for example, the Sahara Desert in northern Africa. Now, it is a risk across most continents, but the biggest area of risk is the Sahel, which is that strip of land south of the Sahara. And across the globe, it's estimated that around 1 billion people live in areas at risk from desertification. Right, our second one is this. So remember, we're looking for a cause of desertification. And this is one where people quite often get mixed up between this term and desertification. Have you worked it out? So let's reveal. It is deforestation. So in semi-arid areas such as the Sahel, around 80% of domestic energy comes from burning firewood. And with population growth, the demand for this increases. And people use any trees that they can find. They either cut down the whole trees or they strip leaves and branches, leaving the trees bare. Now, if those trees are felled, then there are fewer leaves to provide shade, so the soil dries out and the roots no longer bind the soil together. So this leads to soil erosion, and that means that a loose top layer can be blown away, or it can be washed away if it rains, and it leaves the soil exposed and vulnerable to further desertification. And that lack of leaf canopy also means that there is less leaf litter to return nutrients back to the soil, so that soil reduces in fertility further. Right, let's have a look at our next one. So I'm just going to give you a moment to think about what this one might be. Okay, hopefully you have spotted it is overgrazing. So many farmers in semi-arid regions are pastoral and they graze livestock. And they do this either nomadically, meaning that they let their livestock graze in one area before moving on once the soil quality becomes poor, or they farm one site permanently. Now, overgrazing occurs when animals, and in particular we're talking about cattle and goat here, are allowed to graze on one site for too long. And what they do is they strip the vegetation so there is nothing left to bind the soil together, so the soil blows away without the protective cover of vegetation. And they also trample the land, which leads to soil erosion. Right, number 4 is linked to that. So I'm just going to give you a moment to try and work this one out. Again, hopefully you have spotted it is overcultivation. Now, overcultivation occurs because population growth has put pressure on agricultural land to produce more and more food. And this intensive use of the land exhausts the soil of its nutrients, so crops can no longer grow. And it's a massive problem in many developing nations because they're dependent on growing water-hungry cash crops for export. And that means that aquifers and surface stores of water have been drained and they're not getting enough time to recharge. Right, our final one is a term that we have mentioned in the last few moments. What is it? Okay, let's have a look. It is, of course, soil erosion. So we mentioned a moment ago that deforestation removes the leaf canopy that would have shaded the soil below and stopped it from drying out. And it means there's no leaf litter to return nutrients to the soil, making it dry out further. Additionally, there are no roots to bind the soil together, which means the top layer can be blown away, or washed away easily, so it's vulnerable and exposed. But we also have poor farming practices leading to soil erosion. We just said a moment ago that overgrazing means that animals trample the land and they strip the vegetation. There is nothing left to bind the soil together, and the overcultivation means that the land is exhausted of water and nutrients, so it completely dries out, and it means it can be blown or washed away much more easily. Okay, we're going to do a big reveal activity. So can you work out what is hidden behind the question mark before all of the clues are revealed? Let's have a look. So clue number 1, it involves 11 countries working in partnership to reduce desertification. Clue number 2, the project started in 2010. Number 3, it runs across the width of Northern Africa. Number 4, it's based in the Sahel region just south of the Thar Desert. And number 5, it's the world's biggest afforestation project of a 15-kilometre wide strip of land with trees and shrubs. Do we know what we're talking about here? Well, hopefully we have recognised that this is the Great Green Wall of Africa. So it is a huge project across all those different countries, so 11 countries, and the idea is to try and stop desertification, stop the Sahara Desert spreading into the Sahel region. Right, we're going to round up this revision blast with another selection of multiple choice questions. And remember, we have said before that these MCQs are across all your papers, so it's good to get practicing. It's a really good way of making sure that you read questions carefully. Which term is often used to describe the type of hot desert plants which are adapted to store water in their structure? A, coniferous, B, succulents, C, deciduous, D, non-deciduous. Let's reveal the answer. It is B, succulents. Apart from discouraging hungry or thirsty animals, which of the following is a function on the spines of a cactus? A, protection from sand particles, B, insulation from solar radiation, C, insulation from heat loss at night, and D, protection from fire. So let's reveal the answer. It is C, so insulation from heat loss at night. 3. Apart from hearing, what is the main reason why some desert animals such as the Saharan fennec fox have large ears? A, to enhance heat loss from the body, B, to look attractive to other foxes, C, to frighten away predators, and D, to stun their prey. Let's have a look. It is A, so there's lots of blood vessels that run across those big ears, which means that sort of transferring heat away from the body, which is a way of keeping them cool. 4. Golden moles live in hot deserts such as the Kalahari in Africa. They have non-functioning eyes. Sightless, they operate at night. What is such behaviour called when things are operating at night? So we've got A, vernal, B, autumnal, C, diurnal, D, nocturnal. Just give you a moment there. It is nocturnal. Okay, number 5. In hot deserts, some darkling beetles can trap moisture in the air to drink. What process do they rely on to capture the water? Is it A, transpiration, B, evaporation, C, condensation, or is it D, evapotranspiration? Okay, let's reveal the answer. It is condensation. 6. Which of the following is often a cause of soil erosion of farmland in and around hot deserts? Now, we have just talked about this one, so it should be nice and easy. A, overgrazing, B, overwatering, C, underwatering, and D, undergrazing. Just going to give you a few seconds for this one. Hopefully we have remembered it is overgrazing. Okay, number 7. What's the name of the water-bearing layers of rock that can provide valuable water supplies in hot deserts? Is it A, aqua rock, B, aqua layer, C, aquaplane, D, aquifer? Again, we mentioned this a few moments ago in a previous activity. Let's reveal the answer. It is aquifer, so it's water that is stored in rocks below the Earth's surface. 8. What name was given to the lifestyle of tribes such as the Tuareg who move from one place to another in hot desert environments? Is it A, tectonic, B, nomadic, C, economic, D, tropic? Okay, let's reveal this should be a nice easy one. It is nomadic. 9. What problem can sometimes be caused by too much irrigation in hot deserts? Is it A, desalinization? Is it B, saltification? Is it C, salinization? Or is it D, desaltification? Let's have a look. It is salinization. Finally, what type of technology is being used in this image? Is it A, appropriate? Is it B, high? Is it C, low? Is it D, computer? And again, at the bottom, we've got a hint. Local people are involved and these structures are cheap and easy to build or maintain. Let's reveal the answer. It is appropriate. However, if you put low, it is low, so it's low tech, but appropriate, also known as intermediate technology. So cheap, easy to maintain, and a really sustainable way of improving the quality of life of people in lower income countries. Right, well done for getting to the end of this revision blast for hot deserts. Hopefully it is going to help you go into paper 1, and particularly that living world section. Please look out for our other revision blasts. We have got them all in place for all the paper 1 topics, and we will have the paper 2 topics in place shortly. And obviously wishing you the best of luck for those exams.